Okay, it is about 2:02 on Monday, June the 6th, and I'm going to call the meeting of the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission to order. Ms. Sylvia, do you mind doing roll call?
Yes. We have Darren Balaam,
Present.
Ivy Betmolly, Scott Benton,
I'm here.
Lorraine Benuto, Charlene Bybee,
Here.
Elizabeth Flores,
Here.
Jessica Goicochea,
Here.
Amber Joyner,
Here.
Rhonda Lawrence, Leanne McCulley Larson,
Here.
Paige Samples. She's will be out of town.
Thank you.
And then Natalie Sanchez,
Here.
Misty Von Allen, Misty Von Allen,
I see her, I don't hear her.
okay, and Lieutenant Colonel Scott Cotterwell.
I'm here, thanks.
Okay, roll call has been taken.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm going to split public comment. So we're going to do public comment at the beginning of our meeting and then at the end of our meeting. So I'm going to open item 3.01 now, and then I will reopen it again at the end of the meeting. So if there's anybody who would like to submit public comment, please submit a card to our recording secretary, Sylvia, and I'll allow her to call for public comment.
Public comment was received via email from the following: Joe Moravito, Bill Kaiser, and Trustee Jeff Church. Also, we have public comment from Trustee Mayberry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Benton, Superintendent McNeil. You can hear me? Okay, super. I don't give public comment very often. I'm usually on that side of the fence. But I'm Adam Mayberry. I'm trustee that represents District F, and that's one of the two at-large districts. Represents essentially the eastern half of the county. And all the trustees are sort of splitting up duties and coming to all the boards and commissions, and just from the heart, thanking you for your service and your commitment and the time that you put into this committee. There's no political messages here. It's just really a authentic message of thanks and gratitude. And I've found that a lot of our boards and commissions sort of fly below the radar, unless you're on the sheriff committee. But we want to thank all of you for your help and your support. And as a trustee, I'm also a dad, and I have two daughters, and they attend our schools. And I get to take them to school every morning, and I drop them off, and I give them a kiss. I tell them I love them, and then I watch them walk into the building. And I'm always mindful of the world that we live in today, and hope and pray that they don't experience or see or become a part of an act of violence. And so the work that you do is absolutely critically important. Please continue to help build upon the successes that the school district has had when it comes to security and the social and emotional needs of our children. It's just so very important. So that's all that's on my mind. Again, just know on behalf of the Board of Trustees that we recognize and acknowledge and appreciate the work and the dedication that you do. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you all.
Chair Benton, we also have public comment from Sherry Jameson.
Awesome, thank you so much. With that, we're going to move into item 2.01, which is approval of the minutes from our May 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. I'm going to toss it over to Commissioner Bybee. There was some questions that she had on the minutes, so we're going to, before I look for a motion to approve those minutes, I would like to have Commissioner Bybee ask her clarifying question.
Thank you, Chair Benson. I had one question in the minutes on item 2.04, the update on our current and future projects. The conversation was on, it's about the third paragraph down. Currently, all elementary and middle schools have single point of entries. She mentioned that they began with the original 12, but when the bids came out, it came out too high, 1.8 million instead of 1 million. I don't know what that 12 is. Does that refer to the high schools? Because it states, and I'm pretty sure this is true, the elementary, middle schools have single point. Are the 12 we're talking about with the 1.8 million, which maybe Mr. Searcy could tell us, is that the high schools we're talking about, single point of entry for the high schools that the bid came in too high? I was unclear.
Mr. Searcy, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Adam Searcy. I'm the Chief of Facilities for the school district. And the 12 sites that were not completed as planned for this coming summer were actually elementary schools who have existing single points of entry. We were planning to upgrade different elements of their existing infrastructure, and that's, we're going to put that back out to bid and take another crack at that, but not the high school.
Okay. Do we have at any high schools, do we have single point?
Essentially, no. The size of the campus, we've talked about this years ago, the size of the existing high school campuses and the complexities associated with those are very challenging.
Okay, so this is simply.
Hold on.
Sorry, and I just want to make sure, this is an item just for the minutes, so we don't want to be asking questions that
Okay.
are beyond the scope of the minutes.
Okay, but I appreciate the clarification because the minutes were not clear. So I appreciate
The 12 in
clarification.
question were at elementary
Upgrades
schools.
at elementary. Okay, thank you.
So my recommendation, go for it, sorry.
I just wanted to mention Jessica Gogachia for the record. The roll call actually was not complete, and I was present and not in the roll call. So America and I just spoke about that. So I'd like to amend the minutes to include Jessica Gogachia as present at roll call.
Perfect. So my recommendation is to allow the recording secretary to make those changes and then present minutes at the next meeting so that we can approve those, or do we need to? Okay. Or you can make an amendment to make a motion with those amendments and them to approve the meeting minutes today.
Jessica Gogachia, I move to amend the minutes from the May 2nd, 2022 meeting minutes as mentioned to include Jessica Gogachia as present at roll call and to clarify the 12 elementary schools as upgrades for the bid and to approve the minutes as amended.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. Charlene Bybee, for the record, I'll second that motion.
And with that, I need to call for public comment. Sylvia, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move on to item 2.02, which is recognition of Dr. Kristen McNeil, Washoe County School District Superintendent, regarding her years of service to the district and the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. With that, I've invited a very special guest, former Chair Lisa Ruggiero, to share this item and be a co-presenter of this item with me, as she was the founding chair where Dr. McNeil was our founding staff liaison. So I think it's important that we hear from Lisa. Lisa, the floor is yours. Oh, you're muted. Lisa, we can't hear you. You're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm calling in from Washington, D.C., and I'm so honored to be here today. And thank you, Chair Benton, and to Dr. McNeil, the commission members, the staff, and members of the public. It's such a great honor to be here today to honor Dr. McNeil. Many of you know that the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission really was formed as a response to the Sparks Middle School shooting. And Dr. McNeil at that time was serving in the role as chief of staff, and the then superintendent connected her and knew that she would be the right person for the job to partner with the commission. And then we saw Dr. McNeil move to the different positions in the school district, including deputy superintendent and now superintendent. And it was with my greatest honor to express my sincere appreciation to Kristen. Not only has she been a friend, a colleague, and she has also been a champion for our most vulnerable children and all of our children in the district. And during our time with the Sparks Middle School shooting, it was a very trying time for the school district. And one person truly stepped up to mentor and pave the way for the important work of the commission, and that was Dr. McNeil. She was instrumental in orienting the commission members and really championing school safety. And truly, the commission would not be up and running if it weren't for the dedication of Dr. McNeil. And I will always be truly grateful, as are the board of trustees, current and past trustees, President Taylor, and many of our community members for Dr. McNeil's dedication and commitment to the well-being of not only our children's mental health, but their physical safety. And it's not easy to form a commission like this. It can many times make school district personnel nervous because we're talking about issues that need to be solved and resolved when it comes to the well-being of our children. And Dr. McNeil really went into this project with a very open heart and a true value of transparency, and really encouraged these difficult conversations to happen right at the commission meetings. Even when we knew the school district may not have been doing everything right, she was willing and open to have this important dialogue to ensure that problem solving would happen on behalf of our children, our teachers, and our community members. So it is with great sadness, but great honor to express appreciation on behalf of the community and many of us who've had the opportunity to work over the years with Dr. McNeil, to thank her and express our sincerest appreciation for your commitment and dedication to our children. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We're not done there.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It is so good to see you, my dear. You look so great, and thank you so much for the very, very kind words. We have been through a lot together. Your passion and your love for all of our students and our staff has always inspired me. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart. I look forward to seeing you when you're back here in Reno. I love you, and thank you again for everything that you do for our community as well. Couldn't have been here without you, my dear.
I would like to present you, Dr. McNeil, with a plaque of appreciation from the commission. And then I would like to open it up to the other commissioners to have their opportunity for some remarks. But I would like to read out what it says. For your unwavering support and unrelenting guidance to the Washoe County School District Safe and Healthy School Commission, you're being honored with appreciation and gratitude.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That is beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. I think it's important that, like Lisa said, that you've been here since the beginning. Not many of us can say that. I think we just have Misty and Charlene. Amber Joyner is leaving us today as her last meeting as a commissioner. So those are some of the people that have really paved the way along with you, Dr. McNeil. I will tell you, when I came on the commission in 2018, it was nerve-wracking. And I think you being that steadfast hand and guiding me to the seat, and not necessarily guiding me, but being a helping hand alongside everything that I do, I think I've always known that I've had your support no matter what. And if I had questions, you weren't too far to ask. So I appreciate that. And I want the commission to understand that we're losing a true ally, but I would hope to see you maybe someday on this commission. Putting it out there. We have an opening, maybe. But I think you should know it's important that both Lisa and I share the same sentiments, that we wouldn't be here if it weren't for you.
Thank you so very, very much.
Of course. To the right.
Okay. I really, to echo, both Lisa and Scott, and I am one of the original members left on this, still standing on this commission. I volunteered for this. It was before I was elected to office. So I'm not on here as a Sparks City Councilwoman. I'm on here as a community member that has volunteered because it was something near and dear to my heart and my community. And it was the Sparks Middle School shooting that really just made me, when I found out about the commission, knew that I needed to be a part of it. And then, you know, in my office on the city council and other commissions I sit on, really this is one of the ones that I have always felt is one of the most important. And I think your guidance and your support, you know, you've been a rock for us. And the thing that's been, you know, in the beginning, you know, where do we even start? And we really, and I talked about it recently, we were really taught, you know, we started with all of the, you know, hardening our schools, and our first priorities were all of the, you know, the Columbine locks and the single point of entry, perimeter fencing, everything we could do to harden the perimeters and increase safety, which was really a sad thing to have to do, but we knew we had to do it. And it really put us really ahead of the curve. And when we had our safety audit came in, and the nationally recognized group that came in and is going all over the country, and they looked at what we had done, and then the governor started his statewide push for safe schools, we were already up and running and so far ahead of everyone else. And so it felt good, and I was very proud to be a part of that, because we really had done a lot of that, not everything, but so much more than other schools. So I think we were an example to other schools, and in today's age, and in looking at recent, you know, especially the recent shooting in Texas. Immediately, if you're on this commission, you're immediately going into that mode of, we know what we've done. You're wondering, you know, was there single point? I mean, you're really kind of thinking all the things we know, and what, you know, what was not done there, and how much we can learn from all of them. Unfortunately, best practices will change as we realize we still haven't done enough. So we still have a ways to go. And we've added to that in recent years to the mental health aspect. So our safe and healthy, all of a sudden healthy, that we thought, oh, we're good on safe because we've done a pretty good job. But I don't think you can ever do enough to really protect our schools and our teachers and our community. And your support throughout this has been just so critical, you know, as we've changed superintendents, and then you become the superintendent, you were always on our team. And I think that is much appreciated, and the progress we've made has a lot to do with you and your support. And we're going to miss you and wish you all the best. Enjoy. Thank you.
Any other commissioners before I throw Misty out there so that Misty can have the opportunity to talk?
I don't even know if you can hear me. Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry.
Hi, Misty. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, awesome. On my way to Winnemucca, I thank you, Commissioner Bybee, for your eloquent words. I won't be as eloquent on I-80. It's a little hairy out here. But Superintendent McNeil, it's always been such a privilege to learn from you and watch you over these years before the superintendent and now. I just am so grateful for your ongoing support with mental health. You know, suicide is my passion, suicide prevention, and I can't say enough about how you have been there and allowed your team to be there for me. So I hope to encounter you down the road and wish you some much deserved rest and relaxation.
Thank you, Misty.
Thank you so much, Misty. Is there anybody else out there, Amber? No. We have Dr. Oh, there's Amber.
I'm sorry, I'm also driving. But I was just, as you know, as a founding member, having seen this group go through the last 7 years or so, and Kristen, Dr. McNeil's constant support for the group, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Anyone else? If not, we can certainly close that item. Turn it over to Dr. McNeil.
Thank you so much, Chair. Well, you know, every superintendent has a wonderful team, and when I became the superintendent, I turned this over as the staff liaison to Dr. LaMarca, and he has just been such a stellar point of light and helping to make sure that this commission moves forward. So I want to do a huge shout out to Paul and to our secretarial staff. I could not do this without you all too. And then obviously with our legal, they always keep us out of trouble. And so I tremendously appreciate, and I know the chair does as well too, and all of the commissioners. And then obviously our board of trustees, who absolutely believes in all of the work that this Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. I knew you all are going to move forward with all the best hope for the future of our students and our district for all the right reasons. So thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to close item 2.02 and open item 2.03. Invite Dr. LaMarca up here for our discussion of the Washoe County School District tiered practices and interventions that build and support school climate and impact student academic learning. This item is for discussion only.
Chairman Benton, Superintendent McNeil, for the record, Paul LaMarca, Chief Strategies Officer, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Kristen, for everything you've done for me and the school district and this commission. You will truly be missed. Sort of in preface to this, this is going to be almost a summary of some of the things that we've talked about in the last couple of years. I do think it's worth mentioning that already with public comment and several of the comments that were made in honoring Dr. McNeil, we talked both about hardening schools and softening schools, and they're not different things. They're part of one whole, and I think that's critically important, especially when we unfortunately as a nation have suffered another tragedy, and it has to remind us of what we need to do better as we go forward. So what I'm going to talk about sort of is just generally our MTSS process, and I'm hoping that this will sort of lead us into the next agenda item, and we have some partners here that will be presenting on community schools, and that'll be much more interesting than this particular presentation. So children these days, and especially in the last couple of years with the pandemic, they suffer a number of stressors, or they have to cope with a number of stressors. And unfortunately, sometimes that can result in poor attendance, very disruptive behavior, substance use and abuse, emotional dysregulation, and all these things are related to poor academic achievement. So when we talk about school climate and student learning, really what we're getting at is that in order for kids to learn or to optimize their opportunity to learn, they have to feel safe in their environment. They have to feel secure. And this is both physically safe and it's also emotionally safe. So we really are talking about just walking into a building and knowing that I'm safe. It also has to do with physical safety, such as always having something to eat and always having a place to live. And then we can get into more of the emotional kind of safety issues like feeling good about oneself. This will have a little bit of a focus around mental health, but I think it's important to note, and that's one of the things that we try to remind everyone when we talk about these things, is that when we support attendance, we're supporting mental health and we're supporting academic achievement. And when we support mental health, we're supporting behavior and we're supporting attendance. These things are not separate and disparate. They're all part of one whole. There are a lot of different things that we've talked to you about in the last couple of years, some of which seem more naturally to fit in the school climate bucket, others that are more in the instructional practices bucket. So things such as equity and diversity and culturally responsive practices, our family engagement efforts, our social emotional learning efforts. On the instructional side, you see things such as inclusion and relevance and differentiation. Those things go together. You can't differentiate instruction. You can't include students without equitable practices in buildings, without social emotional learning. So again, these are two sides of the same coin. I do want to note that we, as sort of a district, we look at all these strategies and supports for students through our multi-tiered systems of support or system of supports framework. And I know this is sort of, you guys know this, but I'm just going to go ahead very quickly and talk about this. So again, attendance, behavior, social, emotional health, and academics, those are all very much interrelated. At the bottom of this pyramid, this theoretical problem-solving pyramid, you have tier 1. So when we talk about tier 1 practices, we're talking about the things we do for all children every day. But we know that some kids won't respond well to those core practices, and they will require extra strategies and or interventions. And that's really what happens in tier 2. And then if a child continues to struggle, that's when we get into tier 3. And again, this could be simply for attendance, it could be for social emotional health. It all has to do with academic learning. We do many things in a school district, and sometimes this might be part of a problem that we have to solve. We do many things at tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just a sampling, and some of these, it's hard to tell because the font is white, but there are some things that are bolded that are more related to mental health than others. But you see here, building relationships and family capacity to strengthen our partnerships with the home. Morning circles and other restorative practices that might be designed to sort of build the classroom and the school-wide community. Social emotional learning supports, we've talked about that a lot. Our suicide prevention curriculum and our suicide prevention screening that you've heard a lot about in the past. Cooperative learning groups, short cycle assessments. I included some instructional strategies within these slides, and we haven't spent a lot of time talking about instruction in here, but those are things that we do at tier 1. Tier 2, again, this is when we're responding because a child hasn't responded well. So something like discipline at the door. This is the idea that as opposed to sending kids out and sending them down to the office, we send people from the office down to see the child. They meet with the child outside the classroom so that the child can get right back in front of the teacher because instruction matters. And so we want our kids in front of teachers just as much as possible. Tier 2, other practices, small group counseling, mentoring. If there are students that are struggling, oftentimes we find that mentors can be very helpful. Sometimes they just have a hard time seeing what they might be able to achieve. Processes such as check-in, check-out. Any of these we could talk about if you have the interest. And then tier 3. Tier 3, again, these are very specialized interventions. This is for the most needy of child, for lack of a better term. This could be one-to-one behavioral supports, one-to-one counseling and therapeutic supports, threat assessments, case management, list goes on. So when we talk about staffing, I think it's important to note that every employee has something to do with the social emotional well-being of a child. The bus driver, the first person that the child may see in the morning, if they form a strong relationship with that child, that can make all the difference. So virtually every staff member has something they can do to support climate, support students in academic learning. We do have dedicated staff within the school district that their positions are really designed around social emotional health and mental health, and that includes some of these are positions that are at the central level, and we support all schools. Some of them are embedded within schools, but we have our SEL specialists, behavioral technicians and behavior analysts, our school counselors. We have school counselors in every building, multiple school counselors at the high school and middle school level, crisis counselors. We have safe school professionals and school social workers, mental health professionals. We now, at the district level, have a substance use prevention specialist who's helping us try to build capacity out in schools for those kinds of supports. Mental health administrators, our school psychologists, and our nurses. Our nurses are often very instrumental in supporting mental health, not just medical health, but mental health as well. And we rely on district partnerships and co-located services. It's a very interesting kind of debate that I think that we've all seen if we've been paying attention to national media, is like how much of this should be happening in our schools. And sort of the rhetorical question I would ask anyone who's asking that is, the teacher is going to be working with students that have these needs. And if they're not met, is she or he going to be able to do their job? So we don't have a choice but to support our children, the whole child. Now, where our support stops and the community support starts, that's a hard line to define, and we thrive on our partnerships with the community. So we see this as a community, we see educating kids as a community issue. We have the privilege of being sort of, on point for that, but it's a community-wide issue. And we have very strong relationships. We partner, here are some of the agencies that, and many of these people, some are on this commission, but you've also heard from these folks. We partner with Human Service Agency, Juvenile Services, our family courts, Children's Cabinet, Office of Suicide Prevention, Renown Hospital, Awaken, Community in Schools, Family Resource Centers, and the Food Bank, University of Nevada, Reno. And we have a bunch of partners, such as one of your commissioners, two of your commissioners who provide co-located services in some of our buildings. And this is not an exhaustive list either. We have many more partnerships than this. I believe that is all I'm going to say unless you have questions. I will say, back to the partnership, that what you are going to hear here in just a couple of minutes is an example of a very important partnership and very important opportunities that we may have in the future. It's not for sure, but they're going to talk us through some of that. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Commissioner Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question on staffing.
Sure.
So all of the different specialists and professionals that you've listed, you said some of them are school-based, and I was curious, how many are on site at our schools? Is it only the high schools, and are the rest here at the greenhouse? And how do you determine where you have them on site, and how many schools are served directly, and is it something that there's a greater need for that moving forward to have on site?
This is where I asked Dr. McNeil to cover her ears. No. Yes, there's a greater need, but we also do a very good job with some of this. We're going to pull up the slide really quick. Oops. Nope. There, staffing. So I'm just going to go through them really quick. Our SEL specialists, when I'm referring to our SEL specialists, those are at the district level. We only have 4 of them. They support all of our schools. There are a couple of schools that through Rowley dollars associated with ESSER's funding, they've built in their own SEL specialists, or they have title funding and they create an SEL position. Behavioral technicians and board certified behavior analysts, those are at the district level. It's not a large team. We have 5 BCBAs. We have 3 other folks that are behavioral technicians, and they're supporting all of our schools. And there's a heavy support for special education within that realm. School counselors are in every building. Typically at the elementary level, we only have 1. At most of our middle schools, we have a couple. And most of our high schools, we have 3 or 4. And in a couple, I think we have 5 or 6. Crisis counselors, we only have 2 of those right now. They're at the district level. They work with people such as Roy Anderson and others, and they respond to schools when we have a crisis. Safe school professionals, we have safe school professionals in many of our buildings, not all of our buildings, but with the combination of safe school professionals, school social workers, and the mental health professionals, pretty much all of our schools have at least one person that supports them. There are a few that don't. But most of them do. There are a handful of schools that have opted not to have that kind of support, and instead they partner with community in schools, and community in schools can provide some similar kinds of resources. I believe we've got 13 of those programs. And in some of those buildings, we both have community in schools and some of this other dedicated resource. The mental health administrators are at the district level, as is the substance use prevention specialists. School psychologists are embedded in schools. However, most of our school psychologists, I believe we have 48 of them, they serve more than one building because we have approximately 100 buildings. And then we have about the same number of school nurses. And so they do have multiple buildings at times. And yes, we have need for more folks.
And I appreciate the breakdown. On the Safe School Professionals, are those resource officers?
No, Safe School Professionals are healthcare providers, and it's hard to describe them as a unit because they vary. We have marriage and family therapists that serve as Safe School Professionals, and then we have a couple of folks that are working towards master's level degrees. We have social workers that are Safe School Professionals, and that's the state funded that a while back. We actually work with a contractor, Progressus, to hire what we call our Safe School Professionals. From that, we have kind of built out our school social worker positions. We have 15 of those right now. As a district, and this is certainly not a value statement regarding our Safe School Professionals, but for longer term sustainability, we would like to see that shift as much as possible to school social work.
Okay. And I guess just last follow up on this. So the specialists that are and professionals that are at the district, not at the school level, how is a student able to access those services? Do they come here? Do you go to the school? I mean, what is the connection? Since they're not there at school, how do you connect them?
That's a really good question, and they don't come to us. We go to them. But we have at our multi-tiered systems of support webpage, and at all of our offices, we have a link to a referral system. It's a universal referral system, and a school can request support for a child relative to attendance, relative to behavior, relative to mental health. If they've unfortunately done something pretty heinous, we can have a hearing where they may have to be moved. So we try to support schools very fluidly and efficiently through that process. You've heard me talk in the past about district intervention assistance teams. So we meet with schools weekly, and we just brainstorm and problem solve around kids they're having a hard time meeting their needs. Typically when schools access these supports, they've tried a host of things and they just don't feel like they have either the staff or the ability, or they need new ideas on supporting children.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for those questions. Any other questions by the commission? No. Awesome, you're off the hook. Thank you so much. And that will take us to item 2.04, which is the discussion of the United States Department of Education full community schools model and potential future federal funding to support the expansion of full community schools. This item is for discussion only. I'm going to allow Rochelle Morello to introduce our presenters.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Rochelle Moreau. I'm the director of the intervention department. It's my pleasure today to introduce our two esteemed guests and presenters today. They're going to be presenting to you about full service community schools and the work that we've done within our family stability pilot. We've been doing this work within our district and with our community partners since about 2018. We're really excited to give you a little bit of a overview of what that looks like. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Aaron Wright. He told me before and I didn't get it. He's an associate professor in the Human Development Family Science Counseling in the College of Education. And Dr. Jennifer McClendon, also an associate professor in the Human Development Family Science Counseling in the College of Education. She was previously also served as director for Human Services Network and within our School of Social Work at the University of Nevada, Reno. So without further ado, I'll let them take over.
Welcome to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm making a note of the time because I promised we wouldn't go over. So we just want to sort of give an overview of what the full service community schools model is. full service community schools is, you could think about it as either a model or sort of a movement, but this viewpoint where the school can really serve as sort of a central hub within the broader community, and this emphasis on promoting services not just at the student level, but for the family as a whole. So this could include obviously all of the services that we think of for children, but also services for parents, perhaps job training, perhaps nutrition. Oftentimes this looks like co-located services, so perhaps mental health or dental or medical health or that sort of thing. And so it's this emphasis on really sort of using the school as this hub for all of these different services, and also really emphasizing the role of the community members, so families obviously, but also sort of other members of the community, to really sort of contribute their vision for what are the services that are needed, how should they be enacted, what are the priorities of the district, or what are the priorities of the specific school, and essentially this model, this view of providing services really translates into a lot of better outcomes for kids in attendance, in grades, and general sort of mental health outcomes and whatnot. So we have a quick little introduction. Unfortunately, Delisa Crane, who is instrumental in all of this, and it seems like all things, is out sick today, so she couldn't be here. But we work with Rachel Murillo as well, and Sarah Marshall has not put herself on the screen, even though she is oftentimes the sort of organizational powerhouse and the source of these beautiful slides. And then the two of us. We work within this sort of larger framework, and Dr. Lamarca kind of mentioned it. We're part of the Stable Family Partnership, which is a broad group of Washoe County School District staff, UNR staff and faculty, but also, a wide range of different service providers within the community. So it was actually originally started by the previous president of the Northern Nevada Food Bank, but we have the United Way, we have Children's Cabinet, we have Community Health Lines, lots of these different sort of service providers from throughout the community. And the goal is to sort of tie as many of these services together in the interest of sort of synergy. We can sort of accomplish more when we're connected together. And so we're sort of guided by this community schools. This is from the community schools playbook, this model where, providing not just students, but also families access to all of the different supports that are needed to sort of have these successful children leads to not only more successful students, but also sort of stronger communities. And that this also really translates into it addresses lots of equitability issues, and most importantly, it's just a really powerful evidence-based method of improving performance in school and sort of strengthening the community. So what we are working towards specifically is we have been the Family Stability Project has been working with 3 middle schools in particular, Sparks Middle School, Desert Sky, and O'Brien. And we are hoping to apply for a grant, which is coming up in 2 slides. The reason we've been working specifically with these particular middle schools is partly because there's just a demonstrated need at these schools, and we have highly engaged principals at these schools who really sort of view this full community schools model as useful and important. And then also they really sort of focus on some unique and specific issues in the communities that they're in. So this idea of a central hub, the school serving as a central hub, is really useful somewhere like Desert Skies, where you're much more remote, or O'Brien. And so that's kind of why we've had this emphasis on these schools. We've been working with families, really emphasizing this perspective of including their voice and really getting their sense of what, when we're talking about broadly supporting families, what does supporting families look like to the families themselves? And so we've been doing listening sessions in English and Spanish at each of these schools and trying to really understand what the community wants for the schools themselves. Which brings us to was supposed to be dropped on June 1st, but hasn't yet been, but is going to be. The Department of Education has a full-service community schools support mechanism, and it's recently been increased. Previously, it was $30 million, and they now have $75 million. And this is funding to really build out this model. And so we have been working with this broader sort of network, but then also specifically Washoe County School District and UNR on putting together this grant that will really sort of build out the resources at these 3 schools in particular. So I'm going to hand it off there.
Afternoon. I am going to talk about, oh, thank you. Sorry. I'm going to be talking about the essential components of this federal grant application. So there's lots always. We're not exactly sure what will be in the RFP, but one of the things that we do know is that an essential piece of this programming is that there must be a full-time coordinator at each of these school sites who does nothing but oversee and manage all of these community relationships, the relationships with parents, the relationships with school leaders, the relationships with our community partners, which if you've ever worked in a school, you know is pretty essential and time-consuming. In addition to that, the community schools model has 4 pillars that all need to be represented in the work that we put forward. It's okay to be at various stages in the development of these. They don't have to be perfected in order to get the money to start this work, but there have to be goals in all 4 of these areas. They include integrated community supports, expanded learning time and opportunities, active family and community engagement, and collaborative leadership and practice, and I'll go through each of these. The first pillar is integrated community supports, and this is really the whole child approach to learning. It's the idea that hungry children struggle to learn, that children who are unhoused struggle to learn. So what can we do to support the whole child and the whole family in order to get them prepared to learn? Pillar 2 is expanded learning time and opportunities. Mostly out of school time programming, so after school, weekends, summer programming for children and for families. Some of it is focused on academics, but the model also allows it to be kind of a broad variety of different things that just are productive use of time for kids and families, things that can be fun, things that can be learning experiences, however we decide to make that look. The third pillar is active family and community engagement. So every community school has to have a plan for how you are going to work effectively and intentionally with the family and with the community. It's not enough to just sit within the school and say, okay, this is what we think needs to happen. There needs to be ongoing dialogue with families and with the community partners to try to develop plans that are going to best serve the community, and then make sure that that school really is functioning as a neighborhood hub. The fourth pillar is collaborative leadership and practices, and we all know that this one can be a real challenge regardless of the occupation that we happen to have, but sharing leadership is hard, and so we need to have an intentional plan for working towards sharing leadership between parents, students, teachers, principals, and community partners. It's one of the roles that the on-site coordinator takes on is really working to help move the school towards this shared leadership practice model. So this is an evidence-based model, which means that research demonstrates that it has a lot of positive outcomes for kids, families, and communities. Some of them are up here on the screen. And they include, access to community services. Families can access things when the hub is the school because they're already at the school. So that creates a kind of a clear way for them to get what they need. But it also leads to better outcomes for kids in terms of their social and emotional health and in terms of their academic outcomes. So what we need to push this forward, additional partnerships and resources at our school sites. So every school is going to have, each of the 3 schools that we hope to partner with will have a unique set of needs and a unique set of ideas for what they're hoping to accomplish in their schools, what those needs look like. Our initial listening sessions have suggested that there is just a tremendous need for accessible mental health services. So we got to take a deep dive into that and think, what does this look like? What does it mean for services to be accessible? Do we expand what we already have? Do we try to create new ways for people to get to mental health treatment? And then also we've heard a lot about the need for out-of-school time programming, particularly for middle school age kids. You're done with your school day at 2 p.m. What happens then? Where do you go? And how do we build a sense of community among our kids? Are there ways that we can keep the school building open? Are there ways that we can expand opportunities for sports and extracurricular activities without putting even more pressure on our heroic teachers who are doing more than their fair share already? And then we're also looking to develop some champions for full-service community schools. It's kind of a mouthful to say full-service community schools. But so we just want to share information about what this model is, what it is that we're trying to do, what it is that we're trying to develop within our schools and within our communities to create these organized, centralized hubs, places where families know that they can go and get the information and support that they need, schools where children feel welcome and where they feel supported, where they feel connected, where they feel there's a sense of community. And then to do that, we need some funding, right? So we're applying to the federal government, and they are obviously interested in sustainability past the grant funding period. But there's a lot of opportunities for that as well that we've been exploring around braided funding. Many of our community partners who want to work with us have their own funding already. They just need really efficient ways of getting in the door and working with the families that they want to serve. And so most of the funding for this actually falls on that coordination role. And then at the university, of course, we're interested in figuring out how we can get as many of our student interns as possible into the schools for learning opportunities and also to help alleviate some of the staffing burden. And then we do the data crunching, right, of collecting the data, figuring out what's working, trying to do course corrections along the way, and at the end, determining what's been successful. There are a number of websites if you're interested in learning more about community schools. The easiest one to remember and access is, of course, www.communityschools.org, easy peasy. And there's so much information out there. There are hundreds, maybe thousands now of community schools across the United States. Right now, Nevada has 3 community schools down in Las Vegas. We've been in touch with Dr. Joe Morgan, who is the UNLV liaison for those programs. They're doing some interesting things, primarily focusing on K-5 education, whereas we're interested in the middle school approach. But anyway, so there's a lot going on nationally. There's a lot of thought about this. As Sam referenced, there's playbooks, there's evaluation guides, there's just all sorts of resources for how to do this and how to do it well and how to really integrate families and communities into the school in a way that helps our students achieve and grow and do all the things that they need to do. So that's what we have to show you today. If you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them. We also have a lot of our community partners here with us today, so if you have questions about what they do or how they're interested in working with the program, let us know. Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to introduce the community partners that are here? Give them their moment?
Sure. I'm going to start with Sherry Jameson, who is the she was the executive director, CEO of the food bank, who started the project. Just wave and say hi. That's Sherry. Sherry started All Things Good. We started working on this as a community work group, I think 3 or 4 years ago. So she got that started. We have Ann Corey. Hi, Ann. Ann is grant writer extraordinaire for Community Health Alliance, and in a previous life, she was the executive director of United Way. That's right, isn't it? You were with United Way, yes. And we have Kelly from United Way is here. We of course work closely with the Family Resource Center folks, so we've got Brenda and Rochelle here. And from Communities in Schools, Nicole from Communities in Schools is here. I think Dr. Lamarca talked about, there's about 15 schools that partner with, 12 right now. 12, that partner with Communities in Schools, and Communities in Schools provides case management support for kids and helps them with academic achievement goals primarily, but does a lot of other supports as well, and they have been a fantastic partner. Did I miss anybody? Okay.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you all for coming and spending some time with us. I'm going to turn it over to the commission. Looks like Commissioner Gogachia is leaning in.
This grant that you guys are applying for, what's the length of time that this grant's for?
5 years.
5-year grant.
That's what it has
the hope. Fantastic. Thank you. I'm really excited to hear how this goes for you.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you. As somebody who is a community partner with some of the things at the school district, we serve a couple schools, especially Desert Skies. And so what's the best contact to kind of formalize some of that stuff?
It's a good question. For the planning process, if you want to work with us on the planning process, email me and I'll get you on the list, and then you can have another meeting in your life, which is wonderful. We're all looking for that. But then we do meet, so we were meeting monthly, and then there's a small group of us that are going to be meeting more frequently once the RFP comes out to work on the grant proposal. And I would love to have your input at any point along the way, and I also fully welcome you to step away at any point if it becomes too much. So email me, I'm jmcclendon@unr.edu.
Perfect. Thank you.
And just as a sort of an add-on to that, kind of the whole goal of this model is that that shouldn't be a complex question, right? And so if it were funded, you would have a person who we could easily say, that's the person who you connect with. And so that kind of gets at the core of what we're trying to do. So.
Any other commissioners? I can't see if there's any hands raised. Yes, Commissioner Flores.
Thank you. Liz Flores for the record. You had mentioned that there would be at each school site a full-time coordinator. Would there be any other positions funded by this grant?
Those would be the only full-time positions, but there's in the current iteration, but there's lots of part-time support or additional funds for, funding for teachers to do, after-school care, that sort of, or curriculum, that sort of thing. And then also we would be trying to leverage as many students from UNR as possible, as we mentioned. So that would range from undergraduate students up to master's or doctoral level students who are looking for sort of internship work and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I might be going a little too far down this rabbit hole, but to get the best interns, you have to pay them. There's not a lot of paid internship sites for our students, and so if we can even just put a little bit of money towards those, you can get the best students coming up through programs like this, getting engaged with community school models, and then that it interfaces them with the community and with the schools, and then you get the best employees because you can hire them after graduation. So we feel like it's a win-win if we put some money towards that.
And it keeps them in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Charlene Bybee for the record. So how is this different? Is it an enhancement or the next step from our school resource centers and communities in schools, which are doing a lot of that outreach to families, and some Anderson Elementary? I remember, and somebody else, probably Dr. McNeil, could tell me, how many long years ago that was, that Anderson was the very first school that did the Family Resource Center, to my knowledge, and that was 30 years ago. 35 years ago. So how, because some of that is happening and it is very, it's successful, it's helpful, it really, I think most of us believe, and whether, when my kids went to school, it was PTA, and I was there and connected, but not every school had active PTAs. So, as families, we were involved, but some schools more so than others. But the resource centers, how is this different? And obviously the university is a big another partner for this. So is this just taking it up a level of what we're doing now and enhancing it with providing more than is provided right now?
Yeah, so I would say the short answer is that it allows the schools that are already doing tremendously good work to do more tremendously good work and to have it be more organized and efficient. But I want to turn it over to Rochelle and see if you have anything you'd like to say further about that, because we've been doing a lot of talking about that, in fact.
Yeah, thank you for that question. You're right. I turned myself off. Family resource centers and community and schools, we do some of that work, but this allows us to expand it and strengthen our partnerships, and it allows the schools to be the hub of that. So co-locating direct services. So family resource centers, we have a lot of direct resources within family resource centers, but there's some things like mental health referrals that we don't have in family resource centers. So it would allow us to be that hub. It also allows for family voice. And so that coordinator spends time with families and the community, and they really guide what kind of resources are co-located within the school, if that makes sense. So it is definitely expanding what we are all doing, and it's coordinating all of our resources together.
I also, it might be helpful to note too that for many of the schools that have these grants around the country, this is the first step to creating a district-wide community school understanding and model, and then a statewide community school understanding and model, so that there's a lot of coordination between schools, so that schools are kind of doing things the same way. So as you may know, we have a lot of nonprofit organizations in our community that have been stalwarts and have been here for years and years. And then we have others that kind of come and go, and tracking them and keeping apprised of what services are available for which families at which times can be a really time-intensive, arduous job. And so if we're all doing this work together and multiple school sites are coordinating their efforts, it can make a big difference.
With the goal ultimately to have these at every school? Or is that really pie in the sky?
We're starting with 3.
What I will say about that is, I think you really can think about it as a, we're thinking about it as a grant, but you can think about it also as a model or an ideology, honestly. And so I think that in the same way that the whole notion of the whole child being an important thing to look after is important for academics, I think also as you're successful with these sorts of things, it just creates this orientation towards that and this emphasis of, really making the school this hub, and including the community and connecting with the community. And so to some extent, that doesn't have to have funding, but it does have to have buy-in. And so I think you can also think about it as a movement, if you want.
And it's also possible that not every school wants to be a community school, right? Like being a hub for multiple services might be overwhelming for certain schools or not appropriate to certain populations. So it's not that we're not setting out to convert everyone to our way of thinking, but I think it does help to move us towards a new way of thinking about school community relationships, school family relationships, shared leadership, parent involvement. It gives parents a great way to think about getting involved. It gives them sort of a way to hold on. Like you were saying, like some schools have PTAs and some don't. It's a way for parents who might not be interested in traditional PTA type activities to get involved in other types of shared leadership.
Well, and I appreciate the model, obviously my hundreds of thousands of PTA hours through the years. But I really see this, I support all of these efforts, the resource centers, the community and schools, but this taking it up another step, because at the end of the day, it makes our communities, and obviously my focus being on the Sparks City Council is my community, and how can we best enhance and strengthen and make our community an even better, stronger place for our residents, for the children, for businesses, for all this cooperative effort, and then create that sense of community, which I think in my city, we still feel like a small town, and we hear that all the time. In the city, really, our motto is to make sure that we stay family friendly and business friendly. And I think that this is just one way of enhancing that and building strength in your community, which gives you support networks that in turn, it's a domino effect, and it affects everyone in a positive manner, that we're moving the community and our kids and our families and our schools and businesses all together in a positive, because we all could use positive right now, for sure.
You might get an email from me asking if you want to join our group or talk to me about ways that the City Council might be able to partner with our project.
Go for it. Yes, Commissioner Flores.
Liz Flores for the record. I apologize if I missed it in the presentation. Are there models for this in the country where there's been some institutionalization, where it's been built in and broadened statewide?
When I look at the statewide models, I get a little intimidated because we're not there yet in Nevada, so maybe I haven't looked as closely as I should. But I know that California is definitely moving towards a statewide model. They just put a lot of money in their state government towards further development of community schools, and that work was started with the federal grants like the one that we're working on. New York is another place that's kind of working towards this, although most of their efforts right now are in Buffalo and Western New York. But that is where the federal government would like to go, because there are certain aspects of education that are managed at the state level, and they'd like to see support at all the different levels of educational agencies, top to bottom. I hope that wasn't a very clear answer. I'm sorry. It's the best I can do at the moment.
And actually, to that note, they have just this funding mechanism has just added in a state level mechanism, which, again, I don't think we're there yet. But with this emphasis of moving beyond just the district and really working at the entire state level, which I personally think Nevada would be really well suited for in several years.
So I have some questions. Aside from funding, what do you see as some of the challenges you guys are going to face? And maybe in the process, let me ask my other question first. When is the RFP process out, and what does that look like for you guys?
The RFP is going to come out any day now. Like, we just had a meeting this morning, and they were like, any day now. So we're not sure. We're hoping this week or next week. We'll have a minimum of 60 days to respond to the RFP, so we'll have the summer to work on it. Sorry, I lost track of that question. Was that the?
No, that was, and then I'll go back to the original question was, what do some of the without the RFP, I guess you don't know what the challenges are that you're going to face besides funding.
Well, it also might be helpful to note that we actually applied for this a year or so ago, and due to the change of presidential administrations, they canceled the funding opportunity after we wrote the grant. I'm not bitter; it's fine. So we actually have a lot of the nuts and bolts in place for what this grant proposal is going to look like, and we have already gotten support from our partners. We know the university is on board. We know that our community partners are on board, all of that. We just have to, so that is just updating and redoing some of that work that's already been done. The RFP will look slightly different. They're going to have slightly different priorities this time around. We want to be sure to address those. We're hoping that there's a little bit more expansive budget, but that's where we are for now. As far as challenges for this round, I just got way too detailed in my head, so I'm going to see if Sam has some broad strokes.
I think developing a sustainable model so that you're not proposing something that will just immediately disappear in 5 years when the funding goes away, but really thinking about it in terms of capacity building, of we're using these funds to build up schools and to build up families' capacity. And ideally, you could get to a point where family involvement and family leadership is, that's free, that's self-sustaining. And so thinking in terms of how we can set it on a track so that it doesn't have to, be grant funded every single time.
Yeah, thanks. And then I think one of the other, challenges and fantastic opportunities is this piece of parent and family engagement. I think family engagement is always a challenge for every school district across the nation. This gives us another opportunity, another way to kind of leverage and invite people to participate. But it's going to be a heavy lift always. So it's important to us that the people we have on site who are coordinating are seen as allies of families, first and foremost, and can help to build that community in important ways. And I think that, especially post-COVID, I think a lot of families have kind of retreated into their own space. And so pulling people back out into public spaces to be parts of these broader efforts is going to be a challenge for us.
So I think it's fair for me to mention, I think the community has to buy into this for it to be successful and sustainable. What else do you think is important in the sustainability of this program? There are 3 very different middle schools, so I don't think one trait of sustainability is going to work for all 3 schools, but if there's something that measures sustainability, what really are we going after to make it sustainable? So really, what is our longer term goals in 5 years?
I think, to your point, the differences in the schools is so important, and I think, I'm probably going to end up just rehashing the same thing that I said, but by tailoring it to the schools, I think that's really how you get this community buy-in. And so it's hard, we're grappling with these issues, for example, Desert Sky and O'Brien, you have these transportation issues that aren't necessarily the same sort of issue for Sparks, which is more sort of centrally located. And so, I guess when I think about sustainability, it's about tailoring it to those specific communities. So I can give you specifics of, we're looking at how much square footage is at each school and how much they can fit and what that lets us place and that sort of thing. But the broader stroke answer is it's really about tailoring it to those communities and tailoring it with those communities so that they really feel like they chose what they wanted and what they needed. I think I did just rehash the same answer
That's a
and
fair
give it to you
answer.
again.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Thank you. That is the last of my questions. Are there any questions?
Can I follow up on that
Absolutely.
just a little bit? I
Please.
also think that with some increased coordination, we can really demonstrate how much these services are already there and can be grown and can be infused in a stronger way into our schools in ways that are already happening. And when our community partners start to see how easy it is to partner with our schools, and when the people on site at the schools can see how easy and helpful it can be to partner with parents after 2 years of, some low-level conflicts, I think that's really going to demonstrate the value of this, and that's what we're hoping for. As far as long-term goals, I also just from a data perspective, we do want to look at some of the long-term outcomes for the students at these schools. We're of course looking at behavior data and attendance data and all the things that help us lead a child towards graduation. We're also looking at some community indicators. We're responding to some community needs assessments that have been done to sort of think about what's needed in the community, not just what's needed in the school, to try to broaden our thinking about that as well.
No, and I think there are 3 very great schools. I chair the Family Resource Centers Council, so knowing the resources that are available through those Family Resource Centers, I think they partner well with the objective that I'm seeing here. So and 2 of our Family Resource Centers are located near or on site of some of these schools, if not the 3rd one, I think. So I think it's really important that we target the population that's going to best utilize these services and best benefit from them. So I think you guys have done a great job identifying those 3 schools. Dr. McNeil.
Oh, thank you. And I'll just add, I think, this goes beyond just the one-stop shopping, right? Because one-stop shopping, it's still isolated. And the beauty of this system is that it's actually integrated, and all of the pillars are integrated, and that's why it's so important. And then I think with Washoe County's model, having it within the middle schools, because that's when we start to see a decline in parent participation and parent engagement. Not for anybody, we're just making sure that our students understand that their parents are still welcome within middle school, right? Because that's kind of when the age when they say, that's okay. But having now all 3 of these schools, with O'Brien now having 6th, 7th, and 8th, the other important point of this is that now you have 3 years for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so that really builds a really healthy, strong system. So I'm a huge proponent, Paul knows that, of these schools, and I think you all are going to have a fantastic grant application.
Any other questions? Yes, my last question is, aside from funding and community support, how can the commission support you in this process?
Sign our paperwork for the grant as quickly as possible. No, I'm kidding. I think I might turn that one over to Rochelle as well.
I think the best way is one of the slides that they presented was we are looking for champions. So we're looking for advocates to help support the work. This is really entrenched within the community. It's community voice, it's community agencies. So all of you represent that as well, and so helping us to support that work and being that voice for us and being that champion would be the best thing I think that we could have come out of this.
You know my phone number.
I do know your phone number. I will be seeing you on Wednesday.
Sign me up for whatever you need.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thanks for the conversation. The next item that we're moving on to is item 2.05, which is discussion of the 2022 Safety Forum, which was held on May 4th, and possible action to consider changes to the format and topics for the future Safety Forum. I'm going to open this item. I'm going to invite up Megan.
Great. Thank you, Chair Benton, Commission, Dr. McNeil. Just to quickly sort of debrief and give us all a starting point for this discussion. So Virtual Safety Forum was May 4th. We had 3 sessions, if you recall, the early 7 a.m. with 20 attendees, the noon with 40 attendees, 5 p.m. with 45. So we did do better at the noon and evening sessions in terms of attendance. If you recall, we did an evaluation survey. We provided this in the chat at the end of every session. We only did have 22 responses. The first question, would you prefer safety forum to be held virtually or in person? 12 responses said virtual, a hybrid option with, options for virtual and in-person 9. Only one person wanted in-person only. So people like their options there. Number 2, did you find the topics covered in today's safety forum valuable? Yes, resounding yes. Only one person said no. And additional topics. This was an open-ended question, and I compiled kind of most of the responses. Mental health, again, that will continue to show up. Youth voice, information regarding gangs, that showed up a few times. Preventing gun fatalities. Social media safeguards, that also showed up fairly often, just wanting additional guidance for kids in the social media landscape. Sex trafficking awareness, which is a topic we did the previous year, but not this year. Active shooter, obviously that showed up a few times. And then just in general safety protocols for the district. That was not really a focus of this year, not going into district protocols and how to improve those. But that is something we've offered in previous years. And then this one was a little bit open, getting child diagnosed. It wasn't necessarily related to SPED, but more so with mental health concerns there. So that just wanted to make sure you had the survey responses, and that's what I have right now.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to open it up to the commission, get some feedback from you guys since you all participated in it. Commissioner Flores.
Thank you, Liz Flores, for the record. I apologize, I don't remember, but in previous meetings, it had been shared when it was in person what the numbers of attendance were. Do you recall that?
I could only answer ballpark, probably between 30 and 50 people. Typically, that was the turnout when we were doing those one-a-year formats.
So it's similar than the virtual with in-person. Okay, thank you.
I think last year we had a great turnout in the middle of the pandemic. People were just looking for resources, looking for things that were going on and how they can be involved. So we had a great turnout of the different sessions. I will say that one of the changes that we made from last virtual session to this one is they were longer. We added 15 minutes just so that we can have the subject matter experts really present on the topics and give them the opportunity to really dive deep into some of those things. Yes, thank you for those numbers. They were great.
Yep, no problem.
Any commissioners on teams that would like to provide some feedback? Misty, is that you unmuted?
Yes, this is Ms. Ellen, and I could be wrong, but I think we had 70 as the largest group we had at one point in person, but it was all really close. So I think this format works really well for busy families and busy presenters. So I just want to thank all of the wonderful presentations. I got to listen to most of them, and I think we've found a good fit for this, and the feedback really was helpful. Megan, thank you for that. I will say the only challenge was the marketing, and it was no one's fault but my own for solidifying the speakers. That took a lot of back and forth, and so earlier marketing may help us get a wider audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. And maybe I should look at Dr. Lamarca. Are we only limited to one safety forum a year? Can we do one in person, one virtual?
I think you could have quarterly meetings if you wanted. I mean, it's bandwidth. Support from staff. We'd have to be very careful about support from staff, making sure that they have time to do it, but that might be an interesting idea, is to sort of have a series over time. There could be maybe some opportunities with Parent University to partner up a little bit, not necessarily Parent University courses, but to tap into kind of that network. So I think you could redefine the model.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think, when we go back into the COVID, when we had our town halls with student voice, and with each one of those town halls, we had a particular topic. So whether it was mental health or what was happening within the school, you could construct it something such as that, so that at each quarter you could have particular topics and invite the experts in. I mean, I'll tell you, I learned so much. I attended each one of the sessions, but one of the ones that just absolutely was such a shock as a parent as well as the superintendent was the one from the sheriff's department on fentanyl and all of that information. So I think it's really, really informative, but I like the aspect of having them more often, and then that way you could focus in and zero in on a topic.
Yes, Commissioner Flores.
Liz Flores, for the record. Were the presentations, are they still accessible online?
Yes, they're available at washoeschools.net/safety forum, and you can access all of them there.
Okay, and was that widely broadcast to parents in the school
Yes,
district?
and it was done via our connected system, so every parent in the district receives those messages. And then we also distribute that via a family newsletter that goes out weekly, and then it was also shared on our social media channels.
I know in the past we struggled to capture the number of people that are actually watching it on the YouTube after the fact. Is that something that we're able to track, like how many times it's viewed, not necessarily how many unique users are viewing it?
I believe so. I'd have to report back on that one, but yeah, we can get that for you.
Okay. So I think as a commission, one of the things that I saw us struggle with is narrowing the topics and not making them too broad, but giving specific topics. I think that was one of our big challenges, is we tried to combine this. Does this really pair with this? Not that something didn't pair well together. I just felt like we weren't getting the targeted audience that we wanted by pairing things together. So as a single person sitting on this commission, I would say we need to fine tune our topics so that we really, if we do multiple forums throughout the year, that they're really targeted towards people that are essentially taking some time away from their day to really focus on some of the things that we feel are important to us. Commissioner Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we're looking at maybe doing something, say, in the fall, I think the timely topic right now, and now school's out and we're not going to be meeting, is really the school safety in lieu of the school shootings. And that's not going to go away. And today, it's like critically important that parents today, if we did something today and we had, the police chief here, if we had a full presentation in lieu of that tragedy, it's on people's minds. But then as people take the summer off, come back to school, they're putting their kids back into our schools and into a classroom. And I think that's something that is a heightened awareness, and how they can help us make our schools safer, how they can, it's a community partnership there of how do we do that together, from what we're doing on this commission to the school district to parents and families and the mental health community, but really that maybe starting off early in the fall. And I know time-wise, I don't know how that works for you all, but I think in the fall, something on status of our school safety, and then how we as a team and as a community can really just up the bar on that so that people feel safe. Dr. LaMarca talked about kids, if they don't feel safe, physically safe, secure, it affects their learning and the quality of learning. But I think it's a topic that's not going away, and maybe that's a topic that can include several things. I mean, I know you can go really broad, but we could narrow it in to, how do we all increase that safety? And I think it would be a topic in the fall that might be really good to address.
Yes, thank you for that. Any other commission comments? Yes.
Okay. I did debrief with my staff as well, and some of the feedback I received was we were really missing, and maybe a hybrid format would allow for that, just the two-way feedback, that interaction. Well, I know in forums in years past, we were able to sort of fine tune our protocols, for example. It yielded in guides that we created for families, ways that we fine tuned our emergency response in terms of communications. So that would be sort of a request going forward, is to offer that two-way communication, because it allows the district to sort of enhance our protocols as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate hearing that. So there is no action needed on this item. I mean, we can make a motion to accept what Megan has presented to us, but it will be part of our public record, so. No? Okay. Thank you, Megan. Item 2.06 is a discussion and possible action to finalize some goals and objectives for the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission for the 2022-2023 school year. Oh, I'm sorry, can I go back to item 2.05 and call for public comment? Thank you.
There is no public comment, Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you, legal, for that. So with item 2.06, I just want to bring it to the commission to have a brainstorming. What are our goals? Over the years, things have changed. We've shifted from the safety aspect of the schools to the mental health aspect during a pandemic, and now we're at a pivotal point where I want to hear some feedback from you guys so that we can plan if we need more safety forums, if we want to do them in a different format. I think hearing what some of the goals are that you guys have, you guys are the community, you guys are the support that we need on the commission. So I want to hear what makes you tick on the commission. Yes, sir.
If I could, Scott. We talked about it a little bit today, and in light of the recent school shooting incidents that we've had, this was something that really attracted me to be part of the committee. I came from a really, how should I say, rough school in Florida, where that was a regular issue, where we lost a school resource officer right in front of our school. The school did a really good job of hardening that facility, entry control, and in the 4 years I've been here, I visit our high schools regularly, I visit our middle schools regularly, and you know, having spent so many years working in extreme complex emergencies where we're all about hardening facilities and entry control points and things like that, just so many things pop out to me as I'm traveling around. And I don't know the history well of the commission, and when was the last time that we did a lot of research and had a lot of discussion on how to physically make our schools safer. But that would be something that I would really be interested to see on our goals and agendas for next year. You know, what could we do? And never one to recommend something without being willing to roll my sleeves up and be part of the heavy lifting in terms of really taking a look at what could we do better. Just on a personal level, I see a lot of things I think that maybe we could do better, or maybe it's a matter of there are things in place, but there isn't a lot of standardization maybe across the schools. And in my experience, I've only seen improvements made after there's been some kind of an incident. And of course, mitigation is something that we look at. So anyway, sorry for the long-winded recommendation, but that's something that I would like to see on our goals and agendas next year.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I would be remiss if I didn't say prior to the pandemic, we did have a national safety expert that came and presented to us frequently, at least twice a year. When the pandemic happened, our meetings stopped, and then things have changed in that sense of the direction, but I think it's open for conversation. I'm looking at Roy Anderson, who's our emergency management person. That's something that we have worked well in the past, is doing some of that mitigation of making sure that we're proactive, not reactive. And I think that's something that we take pride in on the commission, is being proactive. Commissioner Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. adding to those comments, my number one priority really is to look at what our status is. What is the status of all the school safety enhancements that we've made for the last 8 years, and where do we stand on everything from single point? I believe that all our schools have Columbine locks on all the doors. I don't know, in addition to the hardening, what are our policies and procedures, and do we need to relook at those? Are those classroom doors closed? We've got a lock on them. But if they're open and someone gets in the hall, that doesn't help. So really kind of looking from this incident, from safety experts, and even at our audit, because the Safety Council came out here and did audit us and came out twice and did follow-ups on physical improvements we'd made, where we still needed work, and kind of a plan. And then I think COVID and budget and everything put it to the side. But I think we need to really drill down and look at what is our status of the safety enhancements as they stand, what improvements can we make, what are our procedures, which in this incident just made me just kind of really look at all the questions I had, that I didn't know what we were doing, and I certainly didn't know what that school was doing, but it brought questions to me on what are those procedures. And I think, and we did receive a letter from from your school board trustee, Church, on technology. And when we started this 8 years ago, there was a whole different technology compared to today. And how are we using technology like we should? And can we, through technology, enhance safety of our schools by really utilizing technology in a different way to allow us to do more, because the technology is here today or even next year compared to what we had before. But I think we really, I would like an update, and then see where we can go from there as one of our priorities, to start with the update and the audit and where we ended with that, and then move forward from there.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Commissioner Bybee, what you were saying about starting with, this is where we are as a district, and here's what we already have in place. I've heard from a lot of parents in the last couple weeks with everything that's happened, a lot of fear, and a lot of fear from kids who are afraid to go to school, kids who are afraid of the drills, kids who don't know what to do at this point. So I'd really like to start there, and I love the idea of doing something quarterly. I think that really shows and keeps a momentum that we're part of this community and that this is something that's very important. And I think to continue to marry the two, that school safety is very much tied to not only the physicality of things, but also the mental health of our teachers, of our students, and of the community at large. So I just like to see that marriage continue.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Goguchia.
I would also really love the idea of looking at how we can present something quarterly, and maybe we choose one of those to be an in-person event. I also, the mental health of our students is why I joined this commission, along with the fentanyl awareness, which was a big part of what I was doing last year at this time. I think that if we can continue to include our families in some of the presentations that we get to see at the commission at this meeting, our community, they could come on here, but they're not often. And so if we have the opportunity to share some of the information that we get about the programs that are actually in the schools and what the schools are doing, alongside physical safety and emotional safety, kind of ongoing throughout the year, I think that would be really beneficial to me as a parent and to our parents in our schools.
Thank you for that. I agree. As a parent, it was hard to send kids to school the last 2 weeks, but the importance of them feeling that it's safe, that we have created a culture of safety in our district was what I relied on. So I can only imagine having younger than a 14-year-old and sending them to school, because my 14-year-old understood the importance after I explained your school's a safe place. And I think just having continual conversations about what we are doing to make it safe is a tool in the parents' tool belt, that yes, there are things happening. They may not be broadcasted, but the good things still happen. And I think that's something that I worked with Megan. I think hearing the good things that the district does in terms of safety, it doesn't have to be reactive to a situation in Texas. We can say, you know what, here's what we're doing this month. We're going to focus on educating parents on building numbering, because that was a big task that we took on as a commission. And what does that look like, and what was the purpose of it? It wasn't just to do it, we did it with a purpose, and it was to create a safety mechanism. And you talk about the locks that have been in place and educating parents, teachers, families. Everybody needs to close the door behind you if you want the lock to work. That sort of thing.
And just to add to that, I think as we look at the incidents that have happened, starting with Sparks Middle School, which is why I'm here, to Texas last week, to other incidents, I know in my previous career as a flight attendant, every year we had to do FAA required training. And I know you're probably even more so maybe, but the most helpful I found was the incident reviews. And we would look at an incident, an evacuation, a crash, a safety incident, a security incident, and we would look at what actually happened. And then we would review. We wouldn't criticize, but we'd look in the real world, what actually happened? You know, how did they respond? What was our policy and procedure? And did it happen, or did you create new procedures that were better? And you just can learn so much because you've got everything in place, and in the real world it either goes out the window or it works, and people didn't do it. So really evaluating across the country those really terrible incidents, but I think we can learn and become better and stronger by learning what happened in those incidents and how did people respond and where are the holes in our system that we don't even know. And I think when teachers and everyone in the schools, including our kids, it's why they do the drills, but I grew up doing earthquake drills, but the drills that they do are a fire drill, so that when you do drills and it becomes automatic. You don't even think about it. When you do emergency training or emergency drills, it becomes like an automatic reaction and you don't even think. You kind of melt down afterwards, but it's an automatic response. And I think for our kids and our teachers, those active shooter drills are critical because you don't want them to happen, but when they do, they don't have to stop and think. They know what they have to do, and they do it. And I think it's valuable for us, and maybe that, I don't know if we'll bring back that safety council again or see where they left us, because they have a wealth of information. And there's a lot of information we could get across this country that we could benefit from, I think.
Absolutely. Commissioner Joyner, is this the item that you wanted to speak on?
Thank you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much. I realize this is strange when I'm saying, hey, please work on this as I walk out the door. But I've had so many scheduling conflicts with this committee, and I love and appreciate the work that you all will continue to do. It's just, 7 years in, and I feel like new blood is a good thing. And so hopefully you'll find a parent that can be in my position. I know you will, but I'll hope to still be around and offering my suggestions and ideas. But my only comments were going to be that I really appreciated the email that we got from Phil Kaiser about, I really agree with both of his points, which is the single point of entry in our high schools and the lack of security for portables. I feel like the teachers that I've talked to who work in portables repeat that to me consistently, that they don't really feel safe out there in the boonies. In the portables. And so I wish that we could still keep addressing the high school situation. I know we've been told in the past that single point of entry isn't really feasible, but we should be doing everything we can to make sure, we're doing best practices in our high schools and maybe address some of the portable situations. And then also his second point was about reassessing the temporary alternative placement. And that was something we worked on at the legislature. And it is about time, I think, to look at it and see, is it working? And he talks about the climate of, violence among students and against teachers and against other students, that in some schools there is a climate of violence and fear, perhaps, and we need to be looking at, are we punishing or not punishing appropriately? Is that new system working or not? And I think that is something to look at.
Thank you for that. I have made some notes. Thank you, Amber.
Thanks.
Any other commissioners out there on Teams that would like to speak?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Balaam. If I could chime in
please.
real quick. I think this is and this is one of the reasons, kind of like Bobby, of why I got on this council. And I would like to see how, or get an assessment of where we're at and how we work with the schools to implement kind of like Joyner was just saying, scenarios, because I know, at least on our end of law enforcement, we haven't done that in quite some time. And I think that's one of the things we've realized in a couple calls with some of the schools, that we've had a lot of changeover, and it's about time we get back in, both in the law enforcement personnel and school, to how do we do that? How do we teach our students? Hopefully it never happens here again, but if it does, here's how we secure and react, and maybe get an assessment. Again, I know, like at my kid's school, the side yards are still unlocked and open, so there's no single point, because you still can access the back of the school. So those are things I think it would be great to have another assessment, I guess, by the school police of where we're at, what we need to do, and how we can help as a board, the school district or school police, get all that done.
Awesome, thank you. I agree, and I think, I'm looking at Roy out in our audience, I think each school has a safety assessment that was done at some point. Roy, do you mind speaking about that?
So Roy Anderson, Emergency Manager for the district. So there has been multiple assessments that were conducted originally by the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. In 2019, there was new legislation that required a school safety specialist be adopted in every district. Because of the size of our district, we actually hired an individual for that. So Michael Perry is our school safety specialist, and he has conducted 32 safety assessments this past school year. We're working on an executive summary as we speak, to present to Dr. McNeil and the board as that is approved and moves forward. So we are actually in the process of doing assessment still, even though we don't have the contract with the School Safety Advocacy Council anymore.
Thank you. Any other goals, ideas, updates that we would like? What does the agenda say? Goals and objectives. Ideas, I don't know where you came up with ideas. No. Awesome. So I wrote down some things that I certainly think are of importance, but I don't want to be remiss, so I'm going to open it up to the commission for a motion, if there is the desire of them. Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Thank you. We don't have to make a motion. I just wanted to have a conversation. We have the ability to finalize goals. We can keep this on our agenda. I would be remiss if I didn't say we don't meet again until September. So I want everybody to be mindful of that as we're goal setting. And then
Hey, Scott, do you all, this is Lieutenant Colonel Caldwell for the record, do you already have a list of goals? Because I just joined late.
So I'm going to look at Dr. Lamarck. I think every year we have some sort of framework that we work with. We've never officially had an agenda item like this that I have seen. I think they just come and go in whatever topics are of passion of the commission we talk about. But if there's something...
We actually did have an item of this nature. I believe it was in November.
Yes.
I'd have to go back and check which month you guys discussed it. And you did discuss it this year later than you have in previous years. So there are a set of goals, but they were very, this is from memory, so I'll probably get this wrong. There was an agreement among the commissioners to continue to focus around mental health supports, but there was continued focus around physical safety. I think there might have been a desire to continue to look at safe routes to schools as well. Just since I'm up here, we can summarize this and work together, and that can be on the September agenda.
Perfect.
And then at that time, the commission can reassess it, and if they want at that point, we can maybe, put it to paper.
Perfect. Superintendent, I almost said Commissioner McNeil. I'm preparing myself.
Easy there.
Speaking
easy
it
there.
into fruition, right?
Hold on there. I think it's really important to get Dr. Enfield's participation as well. When she transitions in full-time, I think it would be great for you to be able to sit down with her and kind of walk through what some of these suggestions would be too, and get you prepared for September.
Awesome, thank you.
Hey, Scott, sorry, Lieutenant Colonel Caldwell again for the record, and I don't know if this would be considered as all part of a goal or an objective to improve school safety. 2 years ago, one of my programs at McQueen, they came up with, how do I want to put that together? They called them like first aid packages that they came for. I don't know if you remember seeing, they may have done a presentation. And that kind of was floated around at the schools, basically like, okay, if we do have an incident, what additional things can we do? And one of those was the ability to provide first aid immediately on site, either by teachers or even by the students, and having those kind of packages on site. And I don't think that ever really got expanded to the other schools. I think that those particular cadets made some presentations around the district, but I don't know what the status of that is, if that's considered part of it. The other piece I would add to you, without diming out, any schools. I visited one of my schools a couple of months ago. I parked in the back. I almost always park in the front, walk in the front door, sign in. I usually do that. That's what I should do. I was in a hurry. I parked in the back. I walked into a back entrance of the school, walked down the hallway, and I couldn't get into my program's doors. The doors were locked. I was knocking. I could hear everybody in there, yelling and screaming. And finally, after like 30 minutes of telling them who I was, they opened up. So, we're in the middle of an exercise. We're doing a code red exercise. But I was wearing this outfit that day. Walked into the back of the school, and when we did these types of the trainings that we did at our schools where I came from, I took these kids in the supply room. We locked the doors. It was complete silence. As part of that safety piece was, you don't know if anybody's in this particular room or not. But as I went down the hallway, there wasn't a lot of realism in the training, because you could hear students and teachers in every classroom. There was actually some doors were open. So another aspect of that school safety piece is, we would say in the military, we train like we fight. So if we're really going to do these trainings, how do we implement, how do we support them in doing them a very realistic way? Because you're typically in an incident, you're going to react the way that you've been accustomed and trained to. And so if we're not going to do that, I think that takes away from some of that. So again, I don't know if these are separate pieces of all the same goal or agenda that we would have, or would they be separate ones?
Awesome, thank you for sharing. Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really quickly, if we look into the realism of drills, I'd also like to look into the research of what happens to kids who go through those drills and the impact of sitting through one of those.
Awesome, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you. I asked twice, didn't I? Okay. Well, we're going to move on to item 3.01, which is public comment. We're reopening that item.
We do have public comment from Sherry Jameson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Jameson, and I am speaking today as a private citizen. In my former life as CEO of the Food Bank of Northern Nevada, We enjoyed a 3-decade partnership with the school district to address child hunger, which, as we know, is a major impediment to learning. This community's partnership eventually became a national model for improving child food security, due in great part to this district's willingness to work together, and the same is possible with the community school model. I'd like to thank Dr. McNeil at this moment for always doing everything in your power to effectively use our partnership to support food security for our community's children. There have been many times when you have picked up the phone and called and said, I need you to do this, and we're really grateful for that opportunity. In 1987, the major predictors of family and child food insecurity were the high cost of housing, food, energy and childcare, and insufficient education to maintain employment that pays what we now call a living wage, which enables families to cover all their expenses. Today, 35 years later, it seems that nothing has changed, except that all the items mentioned have become even more costly. Wages have stagnated, health care and mental health care have become less accessible and infinitely more important to students and their families. Without these important resources, it is easy for families to become unstable and exponentially harder for their children to take advantage of their educational opportunities. Nonprofits in this community and around the nation have worked separately and together with school districts to help families meet their needs and educate their children. A number of agencies in this community have, oops, I lost my place and I apologize for that. I don't do much public speaking anymore and have to have some crib notes. Again, nonprofits in this community and around the nation have worked separately and together with school districts to help families meet their needs and educate their children. A number of agencies in this community have realized and acted upon the idea that work to address poverty will help all of us achieve our missions more successfully. The community school model elegantly pulls together all of the critical supports needed to improve and maintain family stability, a key element to successfully educating our children in this community. The model you heard about in today's presentation has been the collective vision of many individuals and local agencies for several years. The opportunity to move this project forward is incredibly exciting and hopefully is an idea whose time has finally come. Thank you very much, and we just are very excited that you had the opportunity to hear this great presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other public comment?
No other public comment.
Awesome. With that, we will adjourn our meeting. Before I do that, I have to make an announcement. There's a meeting on September the 12th here at 2 o'clock. So with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 3:54.